In a world brimming with complexity, few creatures embody harmony like the honeybee. With tireless precision, she dances from bloom to bloom, each motion guided by millennia upon millennia of instinct, each act in service to the whole. And then there are the beekeepers, watchful stewards of this ancient symbiosis. Part agri-scientist, part poet, they move along their hives with the efficiency of Moe, Larry, and Curly, tending to the bees' needs as best they can comprehend, and with the infrequency of a waterfall in the Sahara, sometimes running off, flapping and flailing like a penguin on a hot sidewalk. This is their journey.
Welcome to Beloved Beekeeping, presented by our great friends over at Man Lake. By the way, if you haven't yet, please subscribe to and follow this podcast. Tell your friends about it, and click on over to belovedbeekeeping.com to sign up for our free newsletter. Today's guest comes to us from the Midwest and is a wealth of knowledge on everything from sideliner beekeeping to farmers markets, winter beekeeping, 3D printing, even writing bee-related children's books. That's right, and we'll discuss all of this, but first let's take just 2 minutes to go inside the hive, this feature presented by Primal Bee. The standard beehive design is about 170 years old. It was built for the beekeeper, not the bee. Easy to inspect, easy to harvest, easy to stack and ship. What it wasn't designed for was thermal efficiency. You see, in the wild, bees choose nest sites with thick walls, tree cavities, hollow logs, spaces inside buildings. They're looking for insulation because maintaining brood temperature is one of the most energy expensive things a colony does. A thin-walled wooden box loses heat fast. The bees compensate by burning through more honey, clustering tighter, working harder. It is doable, but it drains resources that could go toward building population or fighting off mites. That's the thinking behind Primal Bee. Thick insulated walls designed around how bees actually regulate temperature instead of how beekeepers prefer to stack boxes. After 10 years of testing across 6 countries, from Florida to Alaska to the Middle East, Primal Bee just passed their first $1 million in sales. Beekeepers in the US, Europe, and Australia are running to these hives now. If you want to give Primal Beehives a try, I've arranged a 10% discount just for Bee Love listeners. Click on over to primalbee.com/beelove and use discount code BELOVE at checkout. That's primalbee.com/beelove, and be sure to use discount code BELOVE at checkout. I'd like to welcome our very special guest today. Bob Ford is coming to us from, the southern part of Minnesota, Bob?
Yeah, between Austin and Albert Lea. We live out in the country between Austin and Albert Lea.
And this is going to be interesting today, I think, because we just have so much to talk about. We are going to be running the gamut from the kind of beekeeping you do to how you've figured out how to make money selling hive products. And also, you're now an author, and I think that's really cool and fun. And we're going to be talking about the books that you've written. But I want to start with this. Your place is called Sticky Bee Honey Farm. How'd you come up with the name? That's really fun.
I tried to figure out a way to so I could have a mascot that would be something of a branding for Sticky Bee Honey Farms. And I wanted a funny, kind of catchy name. And I spent probably 2-3 weeks of going through dictionaries and looking at words and things like that. Once I heard Sticky Bee in my head, I just all of a sudden, boom, that was it. and that's what I chose. And I also wanted somehow to include it with a mascot for the books, to write some children's books to help children get more involved into beekeeping. And so I came up with characters, Sticky, of course, and one of the first names I kept coming up with was Stinger Honey, but there's so many people have Stinger Honey that I've seen out there, and it's kind of an obvious name. So I have Stinger as one of the characters, in not in the books yet, but in the books to come. So Sticky, she goes on adventures and stuff, and that's why I picked Sticky Bee Honey Farms. I just thought it was a cute name for a little honeybee.
As long as we've jumped to that point already, we don't have to go through your topics in any particular order. Let's talk a little bit about the books. I'd like you to tell me why you decided to start writing some books, who they're aimed at, they're children's books, but a little more specifically about that and where they're going from here.
I started out, I started making presentations on the computer to teach children, especially the younger kids, about bees, and try to make them more comfortable with these, because every time you mention the word honeybee or to kids, well, they love the honey, but they're afraid of the bee part. And so I figured that I would write these books and take a character, Sticky, and let her go on adventures to help promote beekeeping to younger children. I made sure that every book had a lesson to be learned in each story, kind of like the traditional books that I used to have when I was a kid, and that there was always some lesson at the end that you learned, learn to be nice or learn to help others, things like that. Just simple lessons learned at the end of the story. They're kind of cute but short, and it's just a lot of fun to do it too as well.
And I think you'd mentioned to me the other day that you were injured and kind of needed something that you could do without being outside hauling around beehives and stuff. Is that kind of what prompted you?
Correct. Yeah, I probably could have started a little earlier in the story, but I was a general contractor for many years. I did commercial construction, a lot of hospital and school work and stuff like that. And anyway, I had several back surgeries over the years, and I took and had a major back surgery about 3 years ago, and I had to lay flat on my back for about 9 months. I'd had a surgery the prior year before COVID hit. It didn't heal correctly, and that's a long story. I won't get into it. I had a contractor back out on me on a project, so I ended up 3 weeks out of back surgery. I ended up having to do the project myself because there was a $5,000 a day penalty for every day that I didn't get, or that I went past the 6 weeks. So I ended up doing everything myself, even laying the carpet and painting and everything. So I tore everything that they did in my back all out. So that's why it was such a major surgery, to tear it all out. And then 10 days later, I went back and they put it all back in. So I vowed that I was not going to work. I was going to let it heal, and I did. And while I laid flat on my back, I thought, what a better thing to do than to sit down and start writing some books. So I wrote 25 to 30 children's books and started doing all the drawings and the poses for Sticky in the books, so that it would be easier for each page. I could bring her in and just post different, surprise looks and this and that. And anyway, it was just fun to do. I enjoyed doing it. So anyway, so now no more construction.
Yeah, no, please. Yeah, so you're the illustrator as well. That's awesome. One of the things that I love about what you've done here is most of us realize we need to get more younger people involved in beekeeping. And what a way to start at a very young age. So thank you for that. I have now children involved and grandchildren involved, and I don't know that there is an age that's too young to get kids involved in beekeeping. What do you think?
I don't think so either. And I've had a lot of people, because I told them at the range for kids, age-wise, even when I published them on Amazon, they even sent me a thing back saying that the books were too advanced for that age, and that there was a few words that I used that were more advanced for the age. My thought was, and they agreed with me actually, was that parents mostly read children the books. That's part of the book experience, is having the parent read the book to the child, and the child starting to see the words and hear the words as they're watching them go across the page. So that's kind of what I think, that being the younger kids, they learn the bigger words and start, because they're going to ask questions while you're reading it. They're going to say, oh, what was that word? Nuisance. What was this word? And so I think it's a learning experience for younger kids. And I'm a firm believer in that kids up to the age of probably 8, 9 years old, most of their parents are reading them in their books at night before they go to bed, or just during the day. I know when I've gone to visit some of my sister's grandchildren, and you read them a book, it's always that you read it, and not that they're reading it. And then you kind of transition into them reading a little bit of it.
Some of the best part of parenting, too.
Sure.
I love it. Those are some great memories. All right, I want to jump into some things that we can learn from your experience. You're in a pretty cold climate there. Now, most of us, when this is going live, it's going to be in the spring of 2026. So, for those of us in the northern hemisphere, we're coming out of winter. We're looking and seeing how many bee colonies made it, how many didn't make it. Our friends in the southern hemisphere that are listening, of course, they're the opposite. They're thinking about winter right now. What kinds of things have you done for your bees to help them get through winter? And maybe preface with how many beehives did you run in the past before the injury, and how many do you run now?
Well, I started out, I just was going to have 2 beehives. Of course, within 2 months, it was so much fun and so exciting. I started splitting hives and creating more and more. And of course, being in the construction, I had plenty of extra wood to build more hives. And so I got up to, I think the most I've had was 65 to 80, something like that. But I found that it was just too much work for my back being that bad. So I figured I'd have to back it down a little bit. And but I had enough equipment for 400 hives. I still do. It was my goal of being that I was in construction. I had a semi already, and I've already got a semi trailer to haul bees to do pollination. And that was my ultimate goal. But of course, my back kind of held me back on that. Still to this day, I still kind of hope to be able to do that, to be able to haul, not so much to California, but, to Wisconsin or Michigan, I think would be kind of fun to do it. Of course, I already had forklifts and skid loaders and all the equipment necessary to do it, but my back is what held me back. No pun intended. Currently, I have 40 to 45, something like that, hives. I treat my hives as best I can. Sometimes I miss the date because of paint issues or something like that, but I do try to treat them. And the worst part about being in Minnesota is that you get through the winter, you think, oh, geez, I only lost 25%. It was a good year. You'll go through 3 weeks of good weather, and then all of a sudden, boom, you'll have another half die off. That's the weird part about Minnesota. But yeah, we always usually end up, usually end up between 25 and almost 60% loss every winter. So you got to get busy splitting and cleaning out nukes and getting everything back ready again. So hopefully I can do it on a bigger scale here soon. That's what I'm hoping anyway.
And I know I'm kind of asking too many questions at one time. We're going to come back in just a second to what to do to prepare for winter. But you mentioned you have maybe 25% loss. 3 weeks later, you find another bunch of loss. Why is that? What is the second round of loss from?
I think it's what they call colony collapse disorder. I think it's just because in Minnesota, our weather's kind of weird. We get like a warm spell and then a cold spell, and and you kind of misjudge when that collapse is going to be, because we'll lose some over the winter. I believe the disease just finally gets to them, and in the spring, just when they're starting to want to build up, they just don't build up and they just die out. But I honestly believe it's because we have a kind of a false spring. And so what we consider spring here, like right now, it's been 70 degrees for the last 2-3 days, but it's going to turn into 50, 45 as highs later in the week. I think that bees that are overwintered into that with the disease and stuff they get from the mites, they just finally and it's weird because they all collapse at the same time. It's not that you just lose this one this day, another one this day. It's you go down 1 week, I walk through, make sure they have enough food, to keep them through the winter. And then you go back again a week later, and you'll have 10, 15 hives that are gone and that I have to clean out. Anyway, it's just amazing how quickly the mice move in afterwards as well.
Well, and my first question was going to be, did they need food? Did they have plenty of food? Because that's often a cause for a spring collapse. It's just running out of food.
I make sure they have enough honey to make it through the winter, so I leave them with enough honey. But a lot of times they don't move from one side of the frames to the other, that they stay centered, and then they would starve, so to speak. But I always, closer to spring, I will go and open up to make sure, and I dump just plain sugar on the frames so that they have food if they need it. And there's always plenty of moisture, of course, in the hive. so I don't have to worry too much about moisture. But usually they're not dead with their heads stuck into the cells. They're usually just dead like in a cluster or just fanned out on what's left of them fanned out on a frame. Because usually when they starve out, they got their heads all stuck in in the cells. That, as far as I'm aware, anyway.
Yeah, that's kind of a good indication. Is heads in, butts out, they're probably hungry.
Right.
Yeah, you might want to have a bee inspector or somebody take a look at some time at one of those dead outs and give you an idea. Was it deformed wing virus? Was something else going on?
Yeah, if a guy could catch it soon enough, like I say, because of the temperature swings, they get a lot of mold on them real fast. And otherwise, I would try to put them under a microscope and take a better look. Some of them that I've noticed didn't have queens, so the queen must have died sometime through the winter or something. There's all kinds of different things that I see. But the thing that is alarming is that you don't see too many mites on the bees themselves, but you do see them on the bottom board of the hive. I don't know if treating more or maybe a better treating, I would have better luck with that.
A lot of that is a matter of where was the mite load in the fall.
Correct.
Did you test in the fall? Did you have a pretty good idea?
Yes, but like I said, with the back injuries, I'm not timely because I always set myself the 7-day time to do the oxalic acid or to do Formic Pro, things like that. Most of the people in this area and almost everybody in our bee club, they lose almost 100% of their hives. I actually thought I was doing fairly well. Like my neighbors and people around me, they just buy new hives every spring. They don't even treat, which is hard for me because then I get their mite load coming from their hives. And so it's just kind of a never-ending struggle. I do believe that chemical-free beekeeping, I do believe in that. I haven't done it because you have to be really timely with that and make sure that you can get out and do that at the correct time. I don't. It's just been a struggle, especially in colder weather.
I hate to sound, well, I don't mean this to sound rude in any way, shape, or form, but it's like, welcome to beekeeping. It is so much harder than people think it is. And so many people get into it thinking, that it's like chickens. I just feed them and water them and they're going to be fine. And beekeeping is not that easy, folks.
Yeah, it's not. I do notice a lot of people, they make it easy, and that's all they do is they just take all the honey in the fall and they just let the bees go, and the next spring they right back buying packages again. I mean, I think it's sad, but that's what a lot of people do that I know of around here.
I admit a pet peeve of mine is that it seems all beehives are white. Yeah, boring old white. And just when I get a pet peeve, Man Lake comes to the rescue with their new color collection. The vibrant new line of colorful beekeeping hive kits designed to turn your backyard into a buzzing work of art. Each kit comes completely assembled, ready to add to your bee yard, but with a big splash of personality. We're talking dandelion yellow, garden green, coneflower blue, and even bold wild rose pink. Because who says a beehive has to be plain old boring white? Imagine stepping into your bee yard and seeing a rainbow of thriving hives, each one buzzing with life, producing golden homegrown honey. And right now, Man Lake is offering podcast listeners 10% off color collection hive kits. Visit manlakeltd.com and use the code SHOWMETHECOLOR at checkout. That's manlakeltd.com, discount code SHOWMETHECOLOR.
I try to do the best I can to keep them going. It's nice to have those hives that do make it through the winter, and they just burst in the spring, and you can split and you can do all kinds of. It's just exciting to do instead of starting from a package and then sitting back and waiting for them to, it takes 2 months for them here to start building up to even to move on. Especially if you don't have wax. I have probably 100 and some hives worth of wax that's drawn out. So that helps considerably because then they don't have to draw wax out. But if you're new and you're starting to try to build up and you're just buying packages every spring, you're waiting first 2 months just to get wax built. So,
and the other exciting thing about those that make it through winter is we can kind of assume they probably have good genetics. So we want to split those. We really want to
Sure.
make sure that we're nurturing and taking care of those colonies.
Yeah, those are the ones you paint gold before you before you leave.
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of people in cold climates will wrap their hives with tar paper, will put some kind of insulation around, even hay bales. What do you like to do there?
I myself, I kind of do a I like to get them out of the wind, and you can put a windbreak up, but the wind usually comes from every different direction anyway. So you almost have to put a U-shaped windbreak around them. But I think that when you do the windbreaks, that you're still getting wind, filling in and going up and over the windbreaks and stuff. So what I do is I actually wait till it's going to be consistently below 56 degrees, and I put them inside of a pole shed that's out of the wind, so that I think that's 99% of what helps to keep them warm is they don't have that wind. When you put up a windbreak, I believe that when you have wind blowing across the top, you'll get a negative air pressure inside as well. And I think that helps to fluctuate in sucking air in and out of the hives. And it's kind of like a sandblaster, but where you're blowing air across the top of something, and it sucks the sand out of the bottle that you're sandblasting with. So that's why I put mine in a building so they're out of the wind, and then when the temperature looks like it's going to be 56 or above, well, actually lower than that, but because I've tried to be proactive, and then I'll set them back out again. I find that there's less condensation in the hives with that, and I don't wrap my hives. I use pallets for all my hives. I put a wood fiber board on top. It helps to not let the water, because you want some condensation in the hive for them to have water, but it doesn't drip like other products that are out in the market. Like, wood would drip. It actually absorbs most of the moisture, but it doesn't literally get drops on it like you would see when you lift off like your styrofoam. If people that use foam on the top, if you lift the foam up, you'll see the water run, down the face of the foam, the moisture. That's why I use wood fiber. It just doesn't seem to drip on the bees. That way they can just go to the hive, especially the edges, and get the water and moisture that they need to keep on it going.
And there are a lot of good products out there.
Yes.
If you go to a place like Man Lake's website, there are things that wrap all the way around the hive that block the wind and have insulation. There's things that go on top. There's a hive heater, which is a solar thing, which I've had really good luck with.
I'll have to try that. I'll have to look into that one. Definitely insulating definitely helps. I don't personally insulate mine. I guess I don't know why, just probably because I have so many of them, but it would take quite a while to insulate and a lot of material to insulate them all. I do have concrete blankets. They're big, huge blankets. They're like 40 foot by 60 foot, and they're insulated with plastic on the top and bottom, like a tarp, insulated tarp. And a lot of them are, 3-4 inches thick. And I do it sometimes when it's going to get really cold. I'll literally roll that out over the top of all of them. And that, I'm sure, helps quite a bit. So insulating does help. So if you have or able to, I would think that most folks with 30 hives, maybe at max, would, I don't know, it must take a long time to wrap a hive, I would think, to do individual hives.
That's why you don't see commercial beekeepers wrapping up 10,000 hives. It's easier to just put them someplace warmer. There are, lots of other products out there, and I think it's great to just try them, see what works for you and the way that you beekeep and the way that your weather is. This last winter, I also tried a primal beehive, and people have heard about this on this podcast, had super good luck with that, but it's really, really thick, insulative kind of material that it's made out of. Didn't need to be wrapped with anything. And by the way, I happen to know what a construction blanket is, but it's not, in case you don't know what it is, I mean, a concrete blanket. It's not a blanket made out of concrete. Go ahead and mansplain that for us for just a second, Bob.
Oh, it's a tarp that we use like when we pour concrete in the fall, when it's getting cold out, and it helps to keep the concrete warm. So you roll out, we usually have plastic down after we spray our sealer on the concrete. Then we'll throw the blankets on top to help keep the concrete to stay warm so it cures longer. You want it to cure up to 26, 28 days. I'm getting old, I can't remember. But the longer you can get it to cure up to 26, 28 days, the better as well. So sometimes even if it's in direct sunlight, we will put blankets on it for the first few days or several days so that the sun doesn't just dry out the top surface right away and it cracks. Sometimes we use it to keep the concrete cool. Sometimes we use it to keep it warm. But most of the time it's in the winter or in the fall to keep it warm. We usually don't pour concrete in the winter because then the ground is froze. And then when you get shifting and movement from thawing in the spring, it's not a good deal. So usually it's mostly used in the fall. So yeah, it's just 2 pieces of tarp with insulation in between, and then they sew it like almost like a quilt.
Bottom line, it's a giant weatherproof blanket.
Yep.
Has no concrete inside of it. When you and I were chatting the other day, you were telling me about some of the things that you do at farmers markets and other places and how you're growing that side of the business. I think this is great information because there's beekeepers, especially hobbyists and sideliners, are always looking for, wow, I need to make a few bucks at this. It's a pretty expensive hobby. And if you're a sideliner, you want to do more than that. So fill us in on some of the things that you've done. Maybe it'll help spring some ideas in others.
Well, what happened is that we used to have honey. I'd have 900 jars of honey in my living room, and we used to just give it away. Believe it or not, that's how much I enjoyed beekeeping. We just gave the honey away to everybody, friends, neighbors. With the mailman, the postman would stop by. We'd just give them all honey. Anyway, after a while, you kind of look and go, well, I'm not going to have a retirement if I keep just buying bees and giving the honey away. So I thought, I'll start going to some farmers markets. So I made my own labels and branded it, and with the Sticky Bee. This is all before Sticky, the books, but went to like a small town farmers markets. The ones that we could get into, a lot of them only allowed 1 honey person, so they wouldn't allow 2. So I had to find other markets to go to. So I was traveling 30, 40 miles just to get to a farmer's market to where I could actually sell the honey. That was probably the biggest issue to overcome. Then when I did do farmers markets, I would sit there all day and you would sell like $100 worth of honey. Well, number one, it's sad that most people don't go to their farmers markets to buy a lot of their food and things like that. But I thought, well, the mayor that I talked to in a couple of the places, the counties and cities that I went to, and their townships, the mayors would say, well, if you stay here longer, the longer you're here, they get to know that you're here, and then, it will build up, which is true. It was true for the first 2 or 3 times I went. I did get more people, but then after that 3rd or 4th farmer's market, those were the customers that I had. It was $80 to $100 worth of honey from then on all the way through the whole summer. And so I stayed the whole summer because I dedicate myself to a farmer's market. I'm going to stay. So I thought, there's got to be a better way to make money with the honey than sitting at the farmer's markets doing that. And I thought, honey straws, the honey sticks, the flavored honey straws that people sell. I thought, those, they must sell like crazy. But the only thing is you're selling them at 50 cents a piece or less to folks. And it takes a lot of honey sticks to even get to $100. But I thought it would draw more people in to buy the honey. So I started doing that. And of course, the people that have made them before know what a labor intensive thing that is to make honey straws. So I actually bought a 3D printer designed on the software. Being in construction, I knew how to do AutoCAD and Fusion 360. So I designed a straw machine, and I bought a pottery wheel for doing pottery with the variable speed pedal. And then I 3D printed this circle on a piece of plexiglass because my printer wasn't big enough to do a 2-foot circle at one time. So I did it in pie shapes, like a pizza shape, so that you could have a pot in the middle. And then when it spun, the honey would go out, into the straws, and the air would come out through the ends. So I made it so I could clip in 40 straws. And then I think it's 40 straws. And then I pour the honey in the middle. And then when it spins, the honey goes in. And then when you're done, you just pinch the straw to get that last ½ inch of honey out of the end so you can reseal them. So then I 3D printed these little holders that would hold the straws so I could have 16 of them in and then seal 16 of them at a time to make it go faster. Without buying a $20,000 machine, I don't know of a way that you could go much faster. I tried using a pressure cooker, and I tried using air pressure and put the jar on the inside with a hose coming out of the center of the jar. And then I had an electric solenoid with the brass valve coming out of the end. And I could stick that in the end of the straws and fill, and just hit a pedal, and it would squirt into the straws. So that works probably almost just as fast as the spinning one, but it was messier. So you had to clean straws and stuff when you were done. But the only problem I had this is a funny story, with the spinner was that I had it set up in the middle of our kitchen. And when we moved into our house, I tore all the walls out in the whole main area here so that we have open living room, dining room, kitchen area, which I'm sure you're probably knowing where this is going. But once one straw popped popped out of the hole.
No, no,
You had a
no.
line of honey all the way completely around the windows, the back of the chairs, all the way around the walls. So I actually took a hula hoop that kids use for playing, and I put it on my stands. I used to play in a band, so I have these light stands. And so I put it on the two light stands, then I put a shower curtain all the way around it. So then whenever anybody visited us, I always tell them, yeah, we're getting down to the point where we have to take a shower in the middle of our kitchen. So, but the shower curtain definitely helps when I have a failure on the straw spinner. But so I thought, try the straws. We did the straws. That helped with getting kids involved, and the parents come. And then it seems like the kids want straws, and the parents then would take honey home. And that's probably doubled our sales. But it still was a lot of time that you were spending. And I drive a 1-ton dually, so I had a lot of money in fuel just going to some places and back. So I decided, I'm going to start a little food thing inside a tent. And so I went and I got licensed with a food license to sell honey lemonade. And so we sold flavored honey lemonade. And of course, that more than quadrupled our sales. People were just all excited. And then they would actually buy honey and to make their own. And we'd always give them the recipe for the honey lemonade. So that worked out well till up to, I believe it was last year, the year before last year, we decided we'd get a food trailer and start doing that. So I built a food trailer to do the honey lemonade. And we also made honey kettle corn. So it's kettle corn like they make at the fair, but we make it with honey instead of sugar. Boy, that was really good. And it took a while to get it so that, things didn't burn or you didn't get, there's a trick to it, to getting it right. But we started doing that honey kettle corn. And of course that just, you're back to making a living now instead of just a side hustle. So that's kind of what I did to build it up. We've tried doing honey cotton candy, but that was really tricky. If there's any moisture in the air at all, that turned to sticky too quick. Sticky as in the bee back there.
Yeah. I've got to say, I have to interject something here. Beekeepers are the smartest, entrepreneurialist, if that's a word, inventors. They can come up with anything to make stuff happen, and you're such a good example of that. How about the you sent me a picture of your 3D printed mason jar honey dippers.
Oh, yeah. We sell our honey in jars, in mason jars. So when we sold it in the mason jars, a lot of people wanted to know what they could use. A lot of people asked me the question about the spoon, that putting a metal spoon in your honey would kill enzymes in the honey. There's some truth to that and some not truth to that, because a lot of your honey, it starts out in a steel pot and you've stored in steel containers, things like that. Anyway, it's a long story. I won't get into that. But so I thought, how could you make it so that you didn't have to keep dipping a spoon in all the time? So I 3D printed these little honey dippers with a handle on the top so that people could take and dip your honey out and then turn it your sideways and drizzle it on your toast. Anyway, they worked out really well. I got my logo printed on the top, and we make them for all the different size jars that we have, even quart jars. Anyway, I just thought it was kind of a way to solve a problem. So I designed that a little bit, I guess.
Can you make some of those with my logo on top?
Oh, sure.
Okay, we'll talk after.
Yeah, no, it's fun to do. I enjoy it. I actually have all 4 3D printers, 4 of them now, sitting here. I made them all so that they were the same so that I could actually make that process easier instead of having different files and different things for each different one. If you're into 3D printing, you'll know why. But so now I have them all upgraded so that they're all exactly the same. So that'll help in the future as well. So, and hopefully I'll put them on Amazon handmade here soon. That's what I'm hoping for.
Maybe Pinterest?
Well, that's another one. Yes. Yeah. I'm not very computer savvy. I was just to be able to do construction work, but a lot of the social media and the stuff behind it, I struggle through it, and I should just find somebody that knows all about it and hire somebody to do it. But I'm kind of the person that I want to, even if I have somebody doing it, I want to know how they're doing. I got to know what they're doing. I got to know the information behind it anyway. So I just try to learn it myself. So
Find a 14-year-old girl to handle your social media for you.
there you go. That's what I need.
I think the computer stuff you can handle. If you can design and print things with 3D printers, it's not like you're not smart computer-wise.
It's a long time, though, to learn how to do some of that stuff. And then a lot of it, to me, gets to be steps. And then you go from, like, I 3D printed a CNC machine, and most of it's all 3D printed except for the electrical, of course. And I printed that and designed it and built it, blah, blah, blah. And but then that's a whole nother set of different knowledge. It's a whole different sets of knowledge to try to figure out that whole thing and try to remember by the time you get done doing that to go back to 3D printing, and then you're back to rewiring yourself to, okay, now I got to have this as what kind of file? Anyway, so it just, and I'm getting older too, and my memory fails me. So it gets to be kind of a struggle sometimes. I have trouble just remembering all the passwords to all these different sites and stuff that you have to get on.
Just do 1, 2, 3, 4 like everybody else.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay. We're not giving that kind of advice here on this show. Before I let you go, I would love to hear a wild and crazy beekeeping story that you've had. You already gave us a crazy story about putting honey in straws and the big mess that it made. Can you think of anything fun or unusual like that you've had actually with bees?
Oh my gosh, yes. It was actually this spring, last spring. I can't remember now, but anyway, I went to go do mowing. I also have a bee farm down in Iowa. Anyway, I went down there to go mow. And when I went to go mow, I was flying across the yard to go to the spot where I was going to start mowing. And I actually hit a stump, and it threw me off the lawnmower. And I hit my head on another stump, of course. So now I have a pinched nerve in my neck. So if I look funny, that's kind of why. Anyways, right after that happened, of course, I got the bees boxes ready for the new packages that were coming, and I think I added 16, so now I got like 45, but I added like 16 or 12 hives, and it must be 16 because it was 4 pallets. So I had the boxes, and I went to go take out all the stuff from winter, out of the boxes. They were semi-cleaned when they die. I try to clean them out right away so you don't end up with a bunch of mold and stuff in there. But there was mice flying everywhere when I was pulling frames out. And it's just amazing how they can get in that little tiny slither under, and so many of them get in. So anyway, after all the mice, I thought, the bees are coming within 2 days, so I'm going to set the covers. And instead of putting both covers on each, I didn't want the mice moving back in right away. And they will go back in right away. So I set the 2 covers halfway on each. So there was half of the hive showing on the left and half on the right on the pallet. And so I did that, leaving them open so that the mice wouldn't move back in, because the bees were only going to be another 2 days, and then I'd have the hives or the packages to put in. Anyway, so I went, I picked up the packages, and I went to go put the packages in. And not only did a mouse, one moved in already and had a nest made with 2 little babies in it. And anyway, so I had to take the nest and set it by the tree where the mouse kind of went down a hole. Hopefully could get the babies and move them or whatever the case may be. But a raccoon had evidently came and pulled every frame out, and it scratched the wax and chewed up some of the frames. So in beekeeping, you end up with a lot of grief. I'm trying to remember the rest of the stories, but there's like 4 items that just all happened all in a row. 5 items that you just stop and you just go, why do I keep doing this? And then when it comes time to open up and put those bees in, it just makes it all worth it, I guess, in the end. But yeah, it was quite an eventful spring.
And you just led up right to where I wanted to finish up, which is you obviously love the bees because you're not, I mean, you mentioned that you had done it even when you were going backwards because you were giving honey away and stuff. So just what is it about the bees that Bob loves?
Well, I like the stories behind it. I like talking to people about them. That was the biggest thing I think that turned me, was that so many people were interested that, oh, you have bees. And the questions that they would ask. When you go for coffee, even tables that were 2 tables away was, oh, you have, local honey, oh, they say the bees do this, they say the bees do that. I listen to a lot of podcasts, especially yours as well, and Jamie's. I try to learn everything I can from professional folks. And that way the wives' tales that you hear about beekeeping, a lot of those I found after 2 years of beekeeping that they weren't, a lot of things I learned weren't true and things like that. And you kind of learn on your own, and it's constantly evolving and constantly moving to a direction, and you're not bored with it. And it's always a challenge too as well. And that's what I think I like best about beekeeping, is just the knowledge, the learning, and the new things that come out, and adapting to issues. I can't adapt to falling off a lawnmower, but I could adapt to the raccoons, tearing my frames out. I know next time I'm not going to do that. So it's a learning curve. You never stop learning. And that's one thing about beekeeping I found is that even I've been doing it for 10, 12 years now, and you just don't stop learning. You constantly are learning new things, and new things happen as well.
So true. All right. Appreciate your time, Bob. It's been fun. Let's meet up sometime.
That sounds great. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks again for joining us on Bee Love Beekeeping, presented by Man Lake. Another big thank you goes to Vita Bee Health for their support. Vita's Varroa control range of products includes Apistan, Epigard, and now Varoxan, extended release oxalic acid strips. Hey, thanks a lot, guys. And if you haven't yet, please subscribe to and follow the show, tell your friends about it, and click on over to beelovebeekeeping.com to sign up for our free newsletter. If you have a guest suggestion or topic you'd like discussed on the show, shoot me an email, eric@beelovebeekeeping.com. And remember, if you're not just in it for the honey or the money, you're in it for the love. See you next week.